Hello. Okay, thanks so much, Chris. That was awesome. Now we're going to have our lightning talks. So those who signed up and are scheduled for today, please queue up here at the edge of the stage so it makes it easy for us to go through everything quickly. And I'm going to turn it over to Philip to manage this process. He's going to take a few moments to set up. Meanwhile, I put a little fruit out there, and there's still some hummus and bread and other things. Enjoy.
We're going to do the Ignite talks, and we got Jesse first, and then Nick and Scott, and we still have room for tomorrow, so I hope somebody wants to do a talk, and especially if you don't want to do a talk, you should do it. Just sort of force yourself. So let me start with Jesse. You can take your 5 minutes, press start there.
Hello? Oh. Okay, hello everyone. I'm Jesse Hallett. While I was looking for topics, a colleague of mine suggested that he wants to learn more about practical stuff like how to set up authentication in a web app. And I said, okay, someone's probably figured out how to do that. I'll talk about that. And it turns out that it's just easy enough that I can show you how to do it in less than 5 minutes. In this case, using Passport, which is a useful library that handles a lot of different kinds of authentication, including traditional password stuff. And it also provides OAuth authentication against a number of different providers, and it does OpenID. And I like OpenID, so I'm going to go with that. Okay, so to use this, what you're going to want to do is bring in Passport and its OpenID module from the corresponding NPM packages, and configure Passport and just give it the basic parameters it's going to need to know for how OpenID is going to work with your application. Most importantly, we specify a return URL there. The way OpenID works is that when a user enters their OpenID identifier into your web app, Passport is going to redirect the browser to their OpenID provider, and then they'll see a login form and then get redirected back to this app to that return URL. And then Passport also needs to know when authentication is complete and it has an OpenID identifier that is verified, how to match that up with a user record. And so that's what would provide a callback, which just takes an identifier and finds a user. For purposes of this demonstration, I've got a fancy in-memory database here. The important thing is that this is a function that, given an OpenID identifier, looks up a user. And in OpenID, sign in and sign up can be done in the same step. So if there is no matching user, we just make one up. You can see we just store the user's OpenID identifier and a little metadata there. And then send that back to Passport via the callback at the bottom. In per node tradition, the first parameter is reserved for an error, but in the OpenID utopia, there is no error. And finally, Passport is going to need to keep track of the user while they're logged in, so it's going to need to store some information in the session. And so we have to tell it how to put user data into the session and get it back later. We don't need to serialize an entire user object, despite the name of serialized user of this function. So we just tell Passport how to, given a user, get its ID so they can put it into a session, and then in the deserialize, how to take an ID and use the fancy in-memory database to look up the user again. And now we have an authentication piece. We need an application to put it in. Passport will work in any application that supports Connect middleware, and happens that Express supports Connect middleware, so let's use that. We just need to create an Express app and bring in some additional middleware to make this work. Since Passport needs a session store, we can use the session store that's provided with Express. It's set up here, I believe, by default. It uses the given secret there to encrypt values and put those into cookies. And then we add some Passport middleware, which tells Passport to put stuff into the session and read stuff from the session on each request. And then the other lines there are just kind of dependencies of the Express session. And then we can get to actually programming our app. We need to set up 2 endpoints for handling OpenID authentication. The first one is now when the user enters their OpenID URL into their application and posts that to the server, it's going to hit that first route, and that just expects some form data with an OpenID identifier value, and we just send that straight to the Passport helper. Once Passport receives that, it's going to go and redirect the browser. And then the second route is the same URL that we specified earlier for the return path. When the OpenID provider redirects back to this application, it's going to redirect to that URL with some added encrypted stuff and query parameters. Again, we send that to Passport and tell it once it's verified that everything is good, what to do on success, or else what to do on failure. And then you'd use it like this. Passport's middleware automatically puts a user property onto the request object whenever a user's logged in, so we can just check whether that's there. If it's there, we can display the sensitive information in the app. If it's not, we know the user's not logged in, and we can do what is necessary. And it works. So in this example app, you can see that you're in fact logged in, and it just shows a little extra data to prove that you're tracked by a genuine database that tracks user sessions. Logging out is very simple. There's a logout method on the request object. And if you want to see the full example, it is available on GitHub. Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse. Now we have Nick, who's going to get the mic on there. Does it sound better with the mic, the whatever, earpiece mic? Good. Anybody? Then it's worth the second to start.
All right, how's the sound?
Great.
Yeah?
Okay.
All right.
Go.
How do I advance my slides here?
Left and right.
All right, awesome. Okay, so I'm going to try and as quickly and completely answer the question, what state can my function touch when it's called? All right, I'm Nick Niemeyer, I'm on the internet. So primitives are immutable. Numbers, strings, null, undefined, booleans, these are all passed by value. They can't be changed in place. If you've got a 1, you can't change the nature of it to be a 2. If you change these things, you can reassign them back over variables, but anything else that had a reference to that value doesn't change, which is great. And then objects are mutable, and everything else is an object. Objects, functions, arrays, dates, regexes, and errors are all objects that can be changed in place. Anytime 2 pieces of your code have a reference to the same object, that's a place where those pieces of code touch. They're dependent on each other. One can mutate the other, and then you get unexpected results when you call the function again. All right. JavaScript has lexical function level scope. So what that means is that the only level of scope is a function. Blocks are irrelevant. You can get weird errors if you do function definitions and if blocks, but that's all BS. Really, blocks are irrelevant to your scope. Anything that is defined where the function is defined inside the function. So if you're just reading through your code, you've got a whole bunch of stuff declared, you can access it, and then you've got a function declared in there. All of the variables inside of, or anything inside of that function can access the stuff outside of it. As you try and access a variable inside a function, it goes ahead and marches through the outer scopes until it finds it. As soon as it finds it, it uses that value. When you try and set it, it does the same thing. It tries to find the variable as it goes out to outer scopes. If it doesn't, it defaults to global scope and creates a new variable in your global scope there. So what this means is that an inner variable can shadow an outer variable. As soon as you have a new variable with that name, you can no longer get past it to find the old one that you were looking for. All right. And whenever you call your function, all the arguments to that function are injected into the scope, including things that are undefined, and as well as an arguments array-like object and the this context. So what that means is inside of a function, you can never see an outer function's arguments array-like object or this unless you assign it to another variable or figure out another way to pass it in. So the invocation context, what this actually is inside of a function, depends on how you call that function. So if you call a function using a method invocation, object.function, and then call it, the object that was used is passed in as this, so you can access that and you can change it. If you use function.apply or function.call, you pass the context in explicitly. You decide what you want your function to operate on as this and hand it in. And if you just call a function without any context attached, this is a reference to the global scope. Function.bind is a way to get around all of these ways of calling a function. Basically, you can set the context, and then it returns a new function that is always used in that context, however you pass it, however you invoke it. Which leads us to the worst way to invoke functions, new. New is crazy confusing because it doesn't follow any other rules of JavaScript. What happens is your function gets invoked in the context of an object that is created that inherits from the magic prototype object of your function. Okay, so you've got that new object that then gets injected as this and then returned at the end for no reason, unless you return another object and then it just throws it away. So basically, creating things with new lets you create a prototype chain of functions that have references to many objects going up. So when you access something in a prototype chain, you say, object.name. It looks to see if it has it in that object, and if not, it checks the prototype and so on, all the way back to object.prototype, from whence most of these things come. And it works the same way that it does with the scope. As soon as it finds one, it returns that. It doesn't worry about, if there's anything past that, that gets shadowed. You can't see it anymore. Except that when you set it, it sets on the original object that you've got. It doesn't set back where you originally got it. So that means, like, if you've got something like object A that inherits from B, and B has a property, 42, if you say A dot, whatever, and increment that, it saves it back to where you were trying to get it from, not back to where the property was found, the value was found. So JavaScript is crazy dynamic. All of these ways to access and modify state present possible options for abstraction, generalization, and code reuse, but they also represent possible places to confuse ourselves and others, tie our shoes together, and create complex interdependencies. So now you know, and knowing is half the battle. Thanks. So I realized we didn't start this time.
And this is better? Wow. Where's the rubber band go? Is that right?
It sounds good. I think you might have it in the other ear.
Should we put on a different ear? How's that?
Oh, perfect.
Magical.
Scott is up.
Hi. Does that really work? Because I can't hear myself. 2 mics. Where's the clicky thing? Cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Scott. That's awesome. I've been programming for a very long time. I've got a blog, and I do a lot of stuff in my blog, and I'm passionate about things like diversity. I've got some books that I'm not very proud of. I've got a podcast that I'm very proud of, including this last one here about how bacon is bad for you. Everyone should check that out, hanselminutes.com. I actually have 3 podcasts. One's called This Developer's Life. So if anyone is, you're all Portlanders, you love NPR. So Hansel Minutes is Fresh Air, This Developer's Life is This American Life, and then I've got another one called Ratchet and the Geek, which is basically car talk. So I've got the complete NPR ripoff down solid. Also, I'm in an epic battle right now with the Scott brand toilet paper people. So when you search for Scott, it's the toilet paper people and then me. So anything you can do to help me out with that, like that guy, Link, Scott, didn't suck, anything at all to get that juice going, because we can't have toilet paper people first when we Google for Scott. So I keep doing all this stuff because I just have to. I am so excited about technology, and I program, and I blog, and I podcast, and I write because I must dance. And people will say, how do you stay so productive? How do you do all of these things? And often people will ask your advice, but then not do it. So don't be that person. Don't be an asshole. Turns out that the secret of scaling yourself is that the less stuff that you do, the more you can do. If you do nothing, you can scale infinitely. And here's a chart to prove it. This is a file copy to dev null. All right, the bigger the file, the less that you do, the throughput is fantastic. So do as little as possible. A lot of people feel like, I love that the young gentleman here has got the joke before everyone else did. One of the danger signs when you think that maybe you're overwhelmed, you're not doing enough, is just, I need to work late to keep up. I just got to, tonight, I'll just stay up late. It's a busy time, honey, just January, February time frame, kind of March, April, May, June kind of area, July through December. And then after that, it'll be okay. But people hope that it's going to be okay, but they don't realize that hope is not a strategy to succeed when you are trying to scale and you're trying to get more stuff done. And there's all this information coming into your life, and it really needs to be triaged. And I use the word triage because it's the right word. It's not to sort or to move stuff around in Gmail or to delete. It means to triage. And what do you think about when you think about triage, right? It's this French word that means to sort, to sift, but it's about zombies. The word is about zombies because that's a toe tag right there. And if you zoom in on a toe tag has all of the different things that you do when you have a parking lot full of dead people who have been eaten by zombies. What do? You triage those people, right? Are you dead? Okay, get out of my parking lot. Do you have a life-threatening injury? I'm going to deal with you right now. Are you minor? Get out of my parking lot. These are major things that you do. You just handle that. You don't go and just take the first person and then give them a Band-Aid when you've got someone over here who's got like a seeping chest wound. And I think that it's funny that in email and in voicemail, an email that's trying to sell me Viagra is a peer to an email from my boss or the president. Like Obama kept emailing me. And every time I'd open Gmail and be like, hey, Scott, from Barack Obama, I'm like, oh no, it's spam. I kept thinking that it could be him at any moment, right? But there was no way to tell the difference. It was really very frustrating. I was trying to triage my life, but everyone was a peer. Plus, you got things like Twitter, which are a huge problem that make your attention, pull your attention. This is a picture of a rat with an electrode directly into his brain, and all he has to do is push that little bar there, just kind of pull that bar down and refresh the kind of the dopamine shot that goes into his brain, right? Just kind of pull to refresh, and it's just like being on a drug. Just pull to refresh. And you get that sense of urgency while no actual work is being done. Just pull to refresh. Remember when there was just one set of footprints on the beach? That's when Jesus unfollowed you on Twitter, because you tweet too much. So what I'm encouraging people to do is do less. Drop packets. Every good system that has flow control drops packets. Communication as a medium by itself is fault tolerant. I mean, we've all had times we've talked to people on cell phones and then sometimes but you understand what they're saying. You still get a general sense of what's going on. You call Brooke up. Dropping the ball is often the right answer. Ethernet does it. AT&T does it. You should do it as well. Now, even though this person is a horrible human being, he had a really great quote here, that being busy is a form of laziness. You meet those kind of like real estate agent types or people who kind of like delete email for a living. I'm so busy, I've got so much stuff going on right now, I'm so busy. It's actually a form of laziness because they're so busy, they're just indiscriminately moving and doing action and freaking out. without actually thinking about what it is that they need to be doing. A better human being, David Rakoff, God rest his soul, said that being creative and making something is the opposite of hanging out. So when you really want to get work done, you sprint. You put your head down, you turn your phone off, you turn off anything that could pop up Toast, you turn off Growl, you turn off Skype, you turn off everything, you get off Twitter, and you sprint, and you run. That is the opposite of laziness. So one of the things that I would give you guys as homework to think about when you're trying to scale yourself is stop checking email in the morning. Checking email in the morning is the number one way that you could actually time warp yourself into the afternoon. Like you sit down, you're at Starbucks, I'm working from home, I'm hanging out. Boom, it's 2 o'clock. Okay, I've done nothing, but that email's handled. What is I was going to do today? Okay, it's 4 o'clock. My wife wants me to bring food home tonight. Okay, it's 6 o'clock. I really need to get going, but now I'm really rocking. Can I work late tonight? Because I'm really focused on making actual progress today. That's the kind of feeling you should have at 9:15 in the morning or 11:30, whenever you guys get up, and not at like 3:30, 4 o'clock at night. So I'd encourage people to don't put energy into things you don't want more of. Email, if you answer email, you know what will happen? You get more email. Really great way to stop getting email, stop answering it. Best way to get no email. Last thing I want to let you know about is conserving your keystrokes. Turns out that you have a finite number of keystrokes left in your hands before you die. Figure out how old you are, figure out how many words a minute that you type, and do the math. Figure you're going to live to be 80. That's all the keystrokes you have left. So when you email me, I am not going to email you back because I don't know you. I'm not going to give you the gift of my keystrokes. Where should my keystrokes go? They should either go into productive work or into a wiki or a blog or notes or SharePoint or somewhere with a permalink. So I'm never going to email you, but I'll write it up and I'll email you a link to it. Then suddenly my keystrokes have multiplied in their power. Emailing one person is always a waste of time. Remember also that email is not a skill, so stop putting it on your resumes. If you take email and Office off your resume, what is it you do again? Remember that it's not your time that is valuable, it is your attention, and who will get that gift. Thank you very much.